Welcome to our comprehensive overview of World War I, one of the most pivotal conflicts in modern history. As we journey back to the early 20th century, we find a world dramatically different from our own, yet eerily similar in many respects. Our voyage takes us to a Europe where the stage was being set for a conflict of unprecedented scale and consequence. The dawn of the 20th century saw the European continent divided into several powerful alliances. These alliances were a complex web of treaties and agreements, each woven with the thread of mutual protection and collective security. On one side of the divide was the Triple Entente, an alliance of three of Europe's most powerful empires, France, Russia, and the United Kingdom. This formidable triad was bound together by a shared sense of geopolitical necessity and mutual interest. On the other side of this great divide was the Triple Alliance, a trio of nations comprising Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. These nations too were bound together by a shared sense of mutual interest and a desire to counterbalance the power of the Triple Entente. These alliances were not merely diplomatic formalities. They were powerful, binding commitments that promised military support in the event of a conflict. This was a time when a skirmish between two nations could quickly escalate into a full-blown war, drawing in allies and turning regional disputes into global conflicts. As the early years of the 20th century unfolded, the tensions between these alliances began to escalate. Each act of aggression, each diplomatic slight, and each perceived threat was another brick in a wall of mistrust and hostility. It was a wall that, once built, would prove almost impossible to dismantle. And so, as the world watched, these alliances set the stage for a conflict that would engulf the entire world. A conflict that would leave an indelible mark on the tapestry of human history. The stage was set, the actors in place, and the curtain was about to rise on what would come to be known as the Great War. Tensions escalated with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary in 1914. This event, often regarded as the spark that ignited the powder keg of Europe, was a turning point in our global history. Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, was assassinated in Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia, on June 28, 1914. The assassins were members of the Black Hand, a Serbian nationalist group that sought to end Austro-Hungarian rule over Bosnia. This act of violence was not just a simple murder, but a political statement with far-reaching consequences. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand set a chain of events into motion. Austria-Hungary, backed by Germany, issued a stringent ultimatum to Serbia. Serbia, though willing to agree to most of the terms, did not fully comply with the demands. This partial refusal was used by Austria-Hungary as a pretext to declare war on Serbia on July 28, 1914. Russia, an ally of Serbia, mobilized its armies in response. Germany, bound by its alliance with Austria-Hungary, declared war on Russia. France, allied with Russia, found itself drawn into the conflict. The complex web of alliances that had been intended to preserve peace instead escalated a regional conflict into a global war. The United Kingdom, allied with France and Russia as part of the Triple Entente, declared war on Germany on August 4, 1914. In a matter of days, the major powers of Europe were at war, their armies mobilizing, their populations bracing for the impact. The assassination of a single archduke had triggered a diplomatic crisis that escalated into a conflict of unprecedented scale. It was a war that would redraw the map of Europe, redefine warfare, and reshape global politics. It was the beginning of the end of empires, the dawn of new ideologies, and the birth of a new world order. Thus, World War I began in 1914, a war that would quickly expand beyond Europe's borders. The First Global War had begun, and its impact would be felt for generations to come. One of the defining features of World War I was trench warfare, a brutal and static form of battle. Imagine, if you will, miles upon miles of deep trenches carved into the earth, filled with soldiers armed to the teeth and shrouded in the stench of fear, sweat, and death. This was the grim reality of the so-called Great War. In sharp contrast to the swift, mobile warfare of previous eras, combat during World War I was dominated by the grueling stalemate of trench warfare. The introduction of new technologies like machine guns and heavy artillery forced soldiers to literally dig in, creating complex networks of trenches that spanned across the Western Front. These trenches, often filled with mud, vermin and disease became the soldiers' home and battle station. Life in the trenches was a brutal test of endurance. Soldiers lived under constant threat of enemy fire, poison gas attacks, and inclement weather. Sudden charges over the top, known as over-the-hill assaults, were met with devastating enemy fire, resulting in high casualties for minimal territorial gain. But the trenches weren't the only technological innovation that shaped the course of the war. The advent of tanks, initially introduced by the British in 1916, added a new dimension to the battlefield. These steel behemoths, though slow and often unreliable, were capable of crossing trenches and barbed wire, providing a much-needed breakthrough in the static lines of the Western Front. In the air, the war saw the rise of a new form of combat, aerial warfare. The skies became another battlefield as planes, initially used for reconnaissance, evolved into deadly weapons. Dogfights between enemy pilots, known as aces, became a common sight, adding another layer of complexity to the conflict. Meanwhile, beneath the waves, submarines introduced a new level of stealth and surprise to naval warfare. German U-boats in particular wreaked havoc on Allied shipping, enforcing a deadly blockade that threatened to starve Britain into submission. The introduction of these new technologies and tactics transformed warfare from a battle of courage and strategy to a test of industrial might and technological innovation. The human cost was staggering, with millions of lives lost in the grueling grind of trench warfare and the terrifying new forms of combat introduced by technological advancements. From the trenches to the skies and beneath the sea, World War I saw a revolution in the art of warfare. The static lines of the trenches, the terrifying power of tanks and artillery, the deadly dance of dogfights in the skies, and the silent threat of submarines beneath the waves marked a new era in military tactics and technologies. These advancements fundamentally changed the nature of warfare. The Great War was a grim testament to the devastating power of industrialized conflict, setting a precedent for the wars to come and forever altering the way wars were fought. As the war dragged on, public discontent grew, leading to revolutions and political upheaval in several countries. It became clear that the war was not merely a battlefield conflict. It was a catalyst for societal change, provoking political, economic, and social upheavals. In Russia, the war's toll exacerbated existing political tensions. The country was already in the throes of economic hardship and political unrest. The war's challenges amplified these issues, leading to the February Revolution of 1917. This uprising resulted in the abdication of Tsar Nicholas II, bringing an end to the Russian monarchy. But the political turmoil did not stop there. Later in the same year, the Bolshevik Revolution erupted, led by Vladimir Lenin and the Bolshevik Party. They seized power from the provisional government, which had been struggling to maintain control amid the chaos. This revolution marked the birth of the world's first socialist state, setting the stage for the rise of communism and the creation of the Soviet Union. Similar scenes of upheaval were witnessed in other parts of Europe. In Germany, the war's hardships, coupled with political and economic instability, led to the abdication of Kaiser Wilhelm II, marking the end of the German Empire. The subsequent formation of the Weimar Republic was a significant shift towards democracy, although the Republic would face numerous challenges in the years to come. And then there was the United States, a nation that had initially chosen to remain neutral. However, as the war escalated and German U-boats started targeting American ships, the United States was drawn into the conflict. The turning point came in 1917, when the United States entered the war on the side of the Allies, providing fresh troops and resources. This significantly tipped the balance of power and marked a crucial turning point in the war. In 1918, the Central Powers began to collapse, leading to the armistice on November 11, 1918. This marked the cessation of hostilities, the silencing of guns, and the beginning of a new era, an era of peace, albeit a fragile one. But the road to peace was not as simple as it seemed. Negotiations commenced, and the world watched with bated breath as leaders gathered at the Palace of Versailles in France. The Treaty of Versailles, signed on June 28, 1919, was more than just a peace agreement. It was a document that would shape the course of history, a document that carried within its clauses the seeds of future conflicts. The treaty held Germany and Austria-Hungary, the key Central Powers, responsible for the war. It imposed severe financial reparations and territorial losses on them, Germany, stripped of its colonies, its military restricted, its economy burdened with reparations, was a nation disgraced and disillusioned. This humiliation and resentment simmered beneath the surface of the Weimar Republic, the democratic government that replaced the German Empire post-war. It created fertile ground for extremist ideologies, for voices that promised retribution and restoration of lost pride. One such voice was Adolf Hitler, whose rise to power and subsequent actions led the world into another devastating war just 2 decades later. But World War I's aftermath was not just about setting the stage for World War II. It was about more than that. The map of Europe was redrawn, empires crumbled, and new nations emerged. The Russian, Ottoman, German, and Austro-Hungarian empires were no more, replaced by countries like Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia. The war also brought about significant social changes. Women, who had stepped into roles traditionally held by men during the war, started demanding more rights and opportunities. This led to a wave of women's suffrage movements across the globe. The war had also exposed the horrors of modern warfare, leading to a surge in pacifist sentiments and a desperate desire to prevent future wars. And yet the legacy of World War I is a paradox. It is a story of hope born out of despair, of peace agreements sowing the seeds of future conflicts, of societies transformed yet unable to escape the spectre of war. The legacy of World War I is profound, shaping the course of the 20th century and beyond. It's a stark reminder of the human capacity for destruction and our relentless pursuit of peace. It's a testament to our resilience, our ability to rebuild from the ashes, and our incessant hope for a better tomorrow. It's a chapter in our history that continues to resonate, to influence our present, and to shape our future. And there you have it, a comprehensive overview of World War I. We've journeyed from the precipice of war, where powerful alliances were on the brink of conflict, to the spark that ignited the fuse, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. This single event set in motion a domino effect that would lead to the first global conflict of the 20th century. We've explored the brutal nature of warfare, characterized by the horrific conditions of trench warfare and the staggering human cost. The advent of new technology, from machine guns to poison gas, forever altered the face of combat. Yet at the same time, these innovations also brought about new forms of warfare, such as aerial and submarine combat, marking a significant shift in military strategy. We've also delved into the political upheaval that emerged in the wake of the war. Public discontent led to revolutions and political change, most notably in Russia, where the Bolshevik Revolution gave rise to a new political ideology, communism. The entry of the United States into the war in 1917 marked a turning point, tipping the balance in favor of the Allies. And as the Central Powers began to collapse, the armistice was signed on November 11, 1918, bringing an end to the fighting. The subsequent Treaty of Versailles, although intended to secure lasting peace, instead sowed the seeds for future conflict. The legacy of World War I is profound and far-reaching. It not only laid the groundwork for World War II, but it also redrew the map of Europe and brought about significant social, political, and economic changes. The consequences of this conflict continue to reverberate through history, shaping the world we live in today. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of the most significant chapters in human history.